Welcome to this new episode of WAF TV. Today we are in Lisbon and we have the privilege of speaking to Mr. Pedro Lapa, who is the artistic director of the Museu Berardo. And he will take us around on a special tour in his incredible museum. The art of collecting has accompanied Mr. Berardo since his tender youth.
Right.
Next to that, there is his great passion for nature, wine and art. Is it possible to enlighten us on the last, his relation towards art?
Well, I think Mr. Berardo says always that since very young, while he was living in Madeira Island, he was poor and had a tremendous curiosity about religious places as churches and museums, and he wanted to get in. And so it was not easy to access these spaces. When he moved to South Africa, where he built his fortune, since the very beginning he started buying artworks. And on my personal opinion, he's a kind of compulsive collector. He's someone that is always building collections. This specific collection came lately. Before he did several collections in South Africa, and it came in a period where he moved to Portugal in the end of the 80s. So he was persuaded by a friend that the country had any museum on modern and contemporary art, especially international. The idea in this period was to build a collection that would provide an overview of the developments in modern and contemporary art in Western countries for Portuguese audiences. They collected for always, since for all the 20th century.
It does.
Yeah. And the main idea of this collection was to catch one major artwork of one major artist. So it was done, what I would say, in extension. In the beginning, the collection was a collection focused on artistic developments in the 50s, 60s and 70s. So these 3 decades were the core of the beginning of the collection. When they start buying these artworks, they had a lot of chance, because before there were a huge crisis in the art markets, given financial crisis. So the stocks of the galleries were full of fantastic artworks that not so many people were about to buy them, and they could choose and did fantastic choices of main works. I have a personal testimony. I was invited to go to a warehouse in 1994 to see a collection that people used to talk about, but nobody knew exactly what it was. And I was really astonished when most part of these works start coming out of crates, and I was seeing a fantastic Andy Warhol, a fantastic Frank Stella, or a Piero Manzoni in a warehouse in Lisbon that nobody knew that it existed there. And the installation of the collection here was postponed for several years. It was installed before nearby Lisbon in Sintra, in a space that was adapted for that function, that was a small space.
But it was well on show, people could go and,
yes.
and see it.
People could go and see it, but the idea that people had in that period was totally different that they got since the collection was installed here. Yeah. Because the space was small, so only several sets of the collection were possible to be shown.
Right.
What's great is you take always the main works. When main works was like a rosebud for me. It's something where you see all the future of the artwork of Lisitsky, as you speak of the constructivism, and you see in one of two pieces what will be tomorrow in this piece, and you have this piece, and that is just great.
That was the idea, the project of Mr. Francisco Capello, who did more directly the collection with Mr. Berardo, was to buy major works. He studied deeply all the works he wanted to buy and to assume if they were adequate, proper for this collection and the goals that he had in mind to install this kind of museum.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is, after when you put and you assemble all the works together, all the connections start popping up and everything becomes possible. However, I always find that the best way to show this collection is by the way that it was thought in the beginning as a collection, very chronological, organized by movements and the main trends of the art practices during the period.
Yeah. But you had also pieces of when they were young, but also pieces like the Liechtenstein, the mirror of the maturity. For me, it's the chef-d'oeuvre of Liechtenstein, and all this series. And that's so great because you see when there was a promise and now what they made the promise. You know?
I think that it's curious that you find that mainly in pop art artists.
Yeah.
So if the purpose of the collection was to make something that was almost neutral, if I can say this word, and extensive in order to cover all the major movements, there's always a taste going on. It's impossible to do a collection without a taste. And if you see more deeply this collection, the sets of pop art in USA, UK, and in Europe, and in several countries in Europe, it's an enormous set of works. And in these sets, you can find easily works from the maturity of an artist, from the youth of an artist.
And like Ockney, the young Ockney.
Yes, absolutely. Right. This foundation has, as the way it was even created, is a foundation with a very public goal. As the country has any kind of collection or institution that could replace the functions that one provides. So the way that this foundation works is overtly a public situation, as a public museum. This is the way that the collection was thought since the very beginning, and the way that the government and Mr. Berardo did the agreement for this foundation. What we would like to proceed with this foundation is certain aspects that in these 10 years were very relevant, and we insist to keep and deepen even more if possible. So we have, since in the country, we have a very passionate attitude from the schools regarding the foundation. We are visited for groups of students that are enormously, and there are some periods that the number of students visiting the museum are almost equally to other audiences, which is very relevant and provides the role that this foundation was created for, to also educative purposes, allow young people to have contact directly with a Picasso, with a Liechtenstein, or any other major artists that before it existed it was not possible. So the temporary exhibition program is also very relevant in the museum and has been more directed now for young artists, in order to provide more links for these young Portuguese artists with other institutions and curators, art critics, and all reception of another world.
Aluquel dólar fora, damos bem de casa. Muende quando cala bernaba, me gondo ya. Mona manye, ya weza. Mona manye, mona manye.